Hello everyone and welcome to Coffee Time with Tatyana and Peggi. I'm Peggy Gross and I'm a law partner in the law office of Frank & Gross in Beverly Hills, California.
Hello everyone, my name is Tatyana Skevin. I'm certified public accountant and a founder of Skevin CPA in Torrance, California. Please get your coffee and join us for a short talk.
Oh, this is good coffee. And since I'm the attorney, I will do the legal disclaimer. Nothing in our videos is to be taken as legal advice in any legal matter, any case. This is just general information that's applicable in the state of California. This may be heard in other states, so look into your own state laws and see what applicable laws per your state applies.
Well, thank you, Peggy, for covering that for us. And today we are continuing our previous conversation about bankruptcy. So we are continuing learning, and today we would like to talk about Chapter 13 bankruptcy and how it's different from Chapter 7 that we discussed in our previous video. So, Peggy, what's the difference, I guess, main difference between the two?
Well, I'd say the big main differences and thought processes is when people think of bankruptcy or filing bankruptcy, most people think of Chapter 7 to eliminate their unsecured debts, move on with their lives. It only takes a few months, and that's what people are really thinking about. The main difference in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy from a Chapter 7 is the amount of time. Like we discussed in prior videos,
right.
And just now, a Chapter 7 is a few months.
Yes.
And depending on your state, where the big difference in a Chapter 13 is that it is 3 to 5 years. So it's much longer, but it allows you the advantage of paying certain creditors back over time if you want to save a house from foreclosure or certain things like that, and you need that amount of time to make small payments on what's behind. So I would say that those are that's the big difference that people are going to really notice.
Okay, and let's I guess then create a profile. Why would someone choose, who would be a good candidate for, Chapter 13 versus Chapter 7?
Well, usually, there's three reasons. There's really three main reasons, and I'm going to be talking very generally because every state is different, every jurisdiction is different. So generally, there's three main reasons why someone would file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Number one, they don't qualify for a Chapter 7. And to qualify for a Chapter 7, you have to do something called a means test. And that's done per state. And the state will look at your income and your family size and determine county to county, well, it's state to state actually, and determine if you have the means, that's why they call it a means test, if you have the means to pay your reasonable expenses and this and that, and if you have the means to have any little bit left over to pay your debts. And that's one reason. Another reason is if somebody makes too much money and they have equity in their home and the equity's too much and they don't want to lose it. So a new assembly bill just passed yesterday in the House.
I heard about that.
Yes, and this is the California House Assembly. And it's really a great thing. It passed yesterday. And one good thing about us doing these videos monthly is when there's new laws or new procedures and things like that change in the legal world, we can let people know right on the spot. So this applies to California, and I printed out last night a copy of Assembly Bill 1885. And this went through yesterday. And when our governor, Newsom, signs it, it will take effect. See, I brought show and tell. This will take effect January 2021. And what this affects as far as bankruptcies is mainly Chapter 7s, because people that had too much equity in their home that wanted a 7 didn't want to lose their home or their equity or this or that. This Senate bill allows a much bigger number for you to have equity in your home as exempt from bankruptcy, and you can keep your home and do Chapter 7. So this is very important, and it has to do with the homestead exemption, and it allows homeowners to file for a Chapter 7 without losing their home and the equity in it. Everything has to apply per person and per situation, but it went up so much that this is a really neat thing. So I wanted to show everyone. This just went through the House yesterday, and it's Assembly Bill 1885.
So I actually heard that equity now increased to 600,000 in Los Angeles County, Orange County, like Riverside is about 400,000. So it's really a good thing.
Yes,
right?
the good thing about that is with the numbers, everyone has to remember, because we have a vast number of people.
County. Yeah, it's
per
all
county,
different.
and it's not a set amount. It's up to that amount. But it beats the 75,000 or 100 before.
Wow.
Okay, so that's something exciting that I wanted to share. And then back to the reasons why someone would pick a Chapter 13 over a 7. Okay, that was number 1. Okay, and number 2 is if they're facing a foreclosure or a repossession on their home because they're behind in payments. Could be a year behind, something like that. Some mortgage companies really let it stack up before they go after you for foreclosure. So in a 13, that allows you 3 to 5 years, which is phenomenal, to pay back in little increments the debt that was owed on your house, so you can keep that. And then 3, the last one, third, the reason someone would file a Chapter 13 over a Chapter 7 is if they don't want to lose some assets. In a Chapter 7, the trustee could and may sell off some extraordinary assets or assets that's above and beyond to pay back your creditors. In a Chapter 13, you generally get to keep all your assets.
That's the best thing.
and still file and get whatever percentage of their, whatever you would benefit from a 7, you can really benefit the same amount of debt relief in a 13, and if you make a good amount of money and there's a lot left over, it would be percentage. And a lot of people go through a 13 paying 0% or a very minor percentage on the debts owed. A lot of it is putting through back payments for homes or assets or things like that. So those are the general 3 big things that someone would file a Chapter 13 over a 7. But each person's situation is going to be unique, and it's always good to talk to a lawyer in your state that specializes in bankruptcy to see if there's any things particular to you. But that's kind of a general information about that.
That is great. So what's the process look like? Is it a lot different from what Chapter 7 is, or?
Well, people, there's so many different chapters and people, and they are very, very different. But luckily, a Chapter 13 process is very similar to a Chapter 7. You have the same paperwork and the same forms, which is a stack, which is turning over your tax return, showing your income and expenses and things like this. That's kind of can get voluminous, but the really big difference is that in a Chapter 13, you propose a Chapter 13 plan to pay back either a percentage of your unsecured debts, which could be credit cards or medical bills, or you're just paying back, let's say, late payments on a mortgage, and that's factored in. So the big difference really is that you're in filing, is that you're adding on to the exact same thing you do in a 7, but you're proposing to a court a plan, and you're showing them how you could do it. Now, if you have businesses and very complicated things with brokerage houses and a very complicated portfolio, it doesn't hurt to contact someone like Tatyana, who's a CPA, to help go through the numbers and come up with a real good, viable plan that the court would grant.
Yeah, so the key phrase here I heard was a payment plan.
Yes.
Right, Peggy?
Yes. I think everyone's ears went up on that.
Right, payment plan. So let's talk about it a little bit. How do you calculate one? What affects the number?
Okay, the general things that attorneys look at and the courts look at in calculating your payment plan are 4 things. One, they're going to look at your secured debt, which we talked about. Those are things like the mortgage, car payments, where the lender has collateral. You took out a loan for your house, the collateral's your house. If you took out a loan to buy a car, the collateral's your car. It used to be, back in my mother's day, that Sears would sell washing machines and use the washing machine as collateral, and you pay Sears back like $10 a month or something like that. So they're going to look at your secured debt as one factor. The second factor is going to be something called a priority debt, and that is really state to state. And in the state of California, what the state deems a priority, well, you can think about it. It's taxes. The state wants their money. So a priority debt would be debts that are paid first as a priority. And it would be taxes. And, you know, those can be looked at, maybe negotiated, but they're going to be paid back in some way. Another thing that the state of California looks at as a priority is spousal support and child support and things like that. Those are kind of the big ticket things. There's some other nominal things, but those are the big tickets. And number 3 is your disposable income. And disposable income is anything after you pay your debt, you pay your monthly bills, anything monthly, and anything that the court gives you credit for as an exemption. So let's say you have certain assets and the court can exempt that out, and don't worry about it, you can keep it, it's exempted. So there's all sorts of things the state gives. There's state and federal list of things you can exempt out and keep. And the bankruptcy will allow you to do it. But disposable is if you have a large amount of income, and anything over that, they will factor in how much of that you have to pay any percentage to your unsecured debt. And the last and fourth thing that's looked at by the court and the attorneys and the trustees are your non-exempt assets. And like we were talking about with Assembly Bill 1885, in a Chapter 7, the exemptions were very low for equity in a home. Now, as of January, the exemption's going to go up a lot. And exemption means you're allowed to keep that equity. It's exempted out from factoring in what you owe in bankruptcy. So the value of your non-exempt assets will be looked at and factored in with this, and those are usually like extraordinary luxury things, jet skis, things like that, or anything above and beyond that the state thinks is kind of extra.
Right. Okay, so that sounds like very reasonable process, right? When it's very fair. So the amount that you're gonna come up with, it's really something that you can afford to pay to, instead of continue in lieu of discharging this debt.
Correct.
Kind of. Yeah. So so once this payment is calculated, right, and you mentioned that's about 3 to 5 years.
Correct.
Things can happen. Does this number stay? Can you modify it?
Well, the one good thing about the court of bankruptcy, which is different than civil courts, criminal courts, and a lot of other courts, is a court of bankruptcy is considered a court of equity, which is very, very different. And what that word means in layman's term is fairness. Equity means fairness. So it's a court of fairness, not actually a court of law. Otherwise, you'd have to pay back your debts.
Right.
Okay? So in a court of equity, they realize that in 3 to 5 years, life is fluid. Okay? Things happen to people in 3 to 5 years. You could lose your job. You could be furloughed. Your child could have some medical expenses.
Right.
You could have new children that could be born with issues that need medical attention.
Right.
And so all that has really been factored in to the bankruptcy codes and bankruptcy laws in the state of California. And what we have here is a term of art. It's called a MOMOD, MOMOD, and it's an acronym. But basically what it means is you can file documents and motions to modify your bankruptcy plan amount, and you attach exhibits to the court that shows proof that whatever it is you're claiming for the reason why your disposable income went down is you present it to the court, and generally the courts are very equitable, which is fair, and if you prove your point, they will modify it down to whatever is reasonable and fair that you can handle.
What are some examples of debts that are being discharged in Chapter 13?
In a Chapter 13, it's very similar to a Chapter 7 as far as discharging debts. You're going to discharge the unsecured, which I said would be credit cards, medical bills, things like that. It's still going to stop foreclosures. It's still going to stop repossessions. There is some things that you can discharge in a 13 that you can't in a 7.
Right.
But generally, it's all going to be the same, except for a 13 will give you some added bonuses of things that can be discharged. And it depends state to state. But in California, you can also discharge maybe some maybe some extra liens that may be on properties, but that really depends case by case. So generally it's similar, and then it gives you a little more, so a little added bonus.
Right. So that's sounds like a good way out for some people, right? And considering the situation we are going through right now, I'm expecting to see a huge increase in those bankruptcy filings, unfortunately.
Well, some people do look at it like you said, and they say unfortunately, but really I look at it as a bankruptcy attorney as very fortunate. The bankruptcy codes and bankruptcy laws are really a blessing. They allow people that sometimes, because of no fault of their own, like what we're going through right now with the pandemic, and people have businesses and like hairdressers or restaurants or whatever it is, and they can't work. And it's really, I look at the bankruptcy code as a blessing. And the reason I say that is because it was actually taken from the Bible. In the Bible it says you should forgive your neighbors of their debts every 7 years, and that's a kind thing to do, because after 7 years, you know, they're struggling and not able to. And the bankruptcy code was taken from the Bible, in that you should forgive your neighbor of their debts every 7 years. And the bankruptcy code really kind of manifests from there. So I look at it as a real blessing that it allows people, let's say, that owe mortgages, instead of losing their house, it gives them 3 to 5 years to make small payments and to keep it. And then when the bankruptcy's over, you walk out into the sunshine free and clear, and the creditors got paid. And if there's some things you can't pay, the bankruptcy code says, you know what, let's forgive it. It's not like it happens every day. And they can move on and be free. So I look at it as a real fortunate thing that we have this in this country, and that we have this in California.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned that it comes from the Bible. I didn't know about that. It's something that I learned. This is great. And I guess on this positive note, we can wrap up our today's conversation. Thank you, Peggy. And
well, I'd like to add one more thing, is that I know a lot of people are going to have questions because they're going through a lot in their lives, especially with the pandemic. people were before, but now there's a lot more weight added on people's shoulders. Right. And if anyone wants to talk privately to me or to Tatyana, we have our contact information, phone numbers, emails listed below. And please feel free to reach out. Tatyana and I really want to help people. That's why we're doing this, and that's why we're doing it every month, because all the laws and rules that are changing right now because of the pandemic, trying to help people out there really need to know. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us below. And on that note, we will see you in our next video. And until then, stay well.
And stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.